guys, what's up? So the big update on official server has finally arrived, and here is a quick recap. Number 1 is Natalia's passive skill, where it's now a camouflage instead of invisibility. She can maintain it for as long as she like, and they removed the exclamation mark feature. They also removed the passive effect, where she gains extra damage when dealing damage to enemies from behind. Her ultimate when leveled up will give permanent critical chance of up to 45%. It's gonna take some time to get used to her new skills, but I think there are some good side to her camouflage state. Have you tried the new Natalia? Next is Aulus. The developers wanted to increase his sustain in the early game, so they're making these changes. Longer duration for his first skill, and the damage reduction can now increase with physical attack stats. To balance, they had to add 6 to 4 seconds of cooldown to the skill. Second skill cooldown is now 5 seconds on all levels, but the attack speed boost is weaker at the early stage. His ultimate will now give critical chance instead of lifesteal, but in return, they had to lower its damage. I think this will improve his late game performance because of the extra critical chance on his ultimate. Next is Alucard. They adjusted his passive to make him deal better damage even when there are minions nearby. His ultimate will now grant permanent hybrid lifesteal when leveled up. To balance, they had to lower his hybrid lifesteal when in ultimate form. These changes were meant to make him better even when his ultimate is on cooldown. Next is Zhong, where his Sha essence is removed. It's the purple bar that's below his HP, which grants extra stats when full. They removed it to make his passive skill simpler to understand. In return, they had to add movement boost when the enemy's Sha residue explodes. But that's not all, because his other skills were also changed. His first skill has a shorter cooldown and a higher spell vamp when hitting minions. Ultimate skill no longer deals damage when entering Dragonoid form. And the enhanced basic attack of his second skill is slightly weaker. Have you tried him recently? What are your thoughts? Next is the buff on Ixia. She now gets 50% attack speed when using her ultimate. Her first skill also has better damage now. To balance, they had to lower her attack speed growth. Next is the buff on Irithel. They shortened the cooldown of her ultimate by 15 seconds on all levels. But in exchange, they had to reduce the duration to 10 seconds. I think this is better now because she doesn't need 15 seconds in ultimate form during a clash. 10 seconds is more than enough during team fights. Next is Odette, and her ultimate dash is back. This adjustment was based on player feedback, which means the developers heard you. Next is Lylia's ultimate. They adjusted the skill by removing its ability to recharge her second skill. This means you should only use the skill for defensive purposes. Using it to recharge her second skill will no longer work, but in exchange, they shortened the late game cooldown of her second skill by almost half. That enables you to spam the skill continuously. And her gloom is now faster when transferring from one spot to another. Next is the buff on Zilong, where he gets better damage and heal in the early stage of the game. This is a move to improve his laning ability. And his second skill will now reset its cooldown after a minion dies within 0.5 seconds after Zilong's damage. Next is the buff on Leomord. They added a new passive effect where every 1% critical chance is converted into one physical attack. It allows him to use critical chance items such as Berserker's Fury and the new item Great Dragon Spear. Cooldown is also shortened by 5 seconds on all levels. Next is the buff on Ruby. Her first skill will have a fixed base damage and the attack scaling is increased at late game. The cooldown is also shortened by 1 second in the later stages of the game. Overall, it's a buff for those players who like to build damage items on Ruby. Next is the nerf on Ling. His attack speed ratio is lowered by 20% and his critical chance is nerfed to 1.5. The developer said he can easily get high critical chance because of the new items and emblems, so they had to implement these changes. And they also said Ling is supposed to focus on critical chance instead of attack speed. Next is the nerf on Eve. Second skill and ultimate now have weaker slow effect. And she now has a longer ultimate cooldown, which is 60 seconds on all levels. Next is the nerf on Alpha. He's too powerful in the early game, so they had to tone down his damage and heal. Lower attack scaling on his passive, while lower base points on his second skill. Next is the nerf on Freya. The developer said it was too easy to spam her second skill, leaving enemies helpless. To make it fair, it now has a longer cooldown and slower attack speed. Next is the nerf on Arlott. His ultimate is too strong, so they had to add a bit of warning to give enemies time to react. As you can see, there's now a mark on the area before the slash. And they also increased its cooldown by 8 to 10 seconds. Next is the buff on Xavier. They increase his first skill-based damage, specifically on the early game. They said it's a way to improve his laning power. Next is the adjustment on Nana. Her early game damage is improved with a higher base damage on her first and ultimate. But in exchange, she loses a bit of late game damage with a lower attack scaling. So stronger on the early game but weaker in late game. Next is Vexana. They nerfed her passive skill in the early game where almost half is removed. To balance, her second skill is improved in the early stages while its late game potential is weakened. Next is the adjustment on Aldous. He now gains 10 stacks when last hitting siege minions. And he gets 5 if he can't last hit. In exchange, the bonus damage per stack is lowered from 6 down to 5. That means he can farm stacks faster, but the effect is weaker. And they added a timer on his first skill icon just like this. Next is Alice. Just like Aldous, she now gains more orbs from siege minions. But in return, the stats she gets from orbs is slightly lower, so more orbs but weaker stats. Next is Faramis. They reduced the number of bounces on his first skill from 3 down to 2. To make up for the missing bounce, they had to increase the skill's attack scaling by 14%. Next are the item adjustments. Great Dragon Spear has replaced Scarlet Phantom. It's now an item with critical chance and cooldown reduction. Its passive will grant 15% movement speed when the hero uses an ultimate skill. It's recommended on heroes that need critical chance but not attack speed. A good example is Clint. Hasa's Claw now has attack speed and critical chance. Its new unique passive will grant 20% attack speed each time a critical strike is made. Rapid Boots now has a new attribute that gives 35% slow effect reduction. Twilight Armor is now more reliable against burst damage if you have high HP. So good news for tanks and supports. Blade Armor's reflect damage is now stronger by 10%. Bad news for Claude. Still Lag Blades gets hit by inflation, so they added 100 gold to its price. Next are the emblem adjustments. Basic Common Emblem will have a weaker region from 15 down to 12. I think it's still usable though. And these are the talent adjustments. Lower movement speed on agility, better damage on Master Assassin, increased mana on life drain, weaker defense on tenacity, reduced heal on Brave Smite, and stronger heal on Killing Spree. Next are the battlefield adjustments. They increased the team experience from killing a turtle by 12.5%. Meanwhile, reaching level 4 will require more experience now. This means both teams will be forced to contest the turtle, especially the first spawn. Tower damage is now better for mages with magic power items. It means their basic attack on towers will now scale better with their build. And that's it for this official server update. It's a big one specifically for the critical build heroes because of the new item effects. You might want to watch out for Irithel, Aulus, and Leomord. And they also nerfed some big names on the meta including Ling, Eve, and Alpha. So what can you say about the update? Which new heroes will come out on top after this patch? Share your thoughts in the comment section. That's all for this video. Stay safe and thank you for watching.